Everyone has that one friend, right? The one you'd do anything for. The one who was there for every scraped knee, every terrible haircut, every harebrained idea you cooked up in your parents' basement. For me, that was Mark. He was the anchor of our little group, the sun we all orbited. But what do you do when the person who looks like your friend isn't them anymore? What happens when the friend you'd take a bullet for just vanishes, and the one you send in to find him comes back? Wrong. We went to the old playground on a dare. It was supposed to be a joke, a way to kill another boring summer night. We figured the stories about the slide were just that, stories. The kind of local legend you tell to scare little kids. But then Mark went down, and he never came out. And when David came out, he knew things. Secrets I'd never told a living soul. Secrets that still make my skin crawl in the middle of the night. This isn't just a story. This is a confession. It's a warning. And it's the honest-to-God truth of what happened that night at Blackwood Park. The night I lost two of my best friends. One to whatever was in the darkness, and the other to whatever came back wearing his face. Our town wasn't special. It was just one of those sprawling suburbs that all bleed into each other, a place defined more by what it wasn't than what it was. It wasn't the city, and it wasn't the country. It was the space in between. And right in the heart of that in-between, pushed up against a patch of woods that wouldn't give up, was Blackwood Park. By day, it was just a sad, rusted-out relic. The swings groaned like an old man trying to get out of a comfortable chair. The merry-go-round was permanently tilted, looking like a forgotten UFO surrendering to rust. And then there was the slide. It was this monstrous thing from the 70s, a long, enclosed tube of faded yellow plastic that snaked down from a rickety wooden platform. We called it the Worm. Even in the bright afternoon sun, its entrance was a dark, unwelcoming mouth. The four of us, me, Mark, David, and Chloe, grew up with that park as the backdrop to our lives. It's where we learned to swing high enough to feel like we could fly, where we had our first real water balloon fights, and where we'd sit on the splintered picnic tables talking about everything and nothing while the sun went down. But as we got older, the park's daytime innocence was replaced by a nighttime reputation. The story was different depending on who you asked. Some people said the park was built over an old unmarked cemetery. Others whispered that a kid had disappeared there back in the 80s, a boy who went into the worm and just never came out the other side. The official story was that his family moved away without notice, but the legend was always more interesting, more frightening. The legend said the slide didn't just take you from the top to the bottom, it took you somewhere else. For us at 17, it was all a big joke. A ghost story to spice up our town's boring history. We were on the edge of adulthood, immortal in that way only teenagers can feel. We were more worried about passing our driving tests and prom dates than we were about local boogeymen. That summer was a long, humid drag. Days were spent at the community pool, evenings were for loitering in parking lots, and nights were for driving aimlessly down empty roads, just looking for something to break. The monotony. It was on one of those nights, suffocating in the heat of Mark's beat-up sedan, that the idea was born. Mark, as usual, was the one who started it. He was fearless, a magnet for bad ideas, with a grin that could talk you into just about anything. "I'm so bored I could scream," he said, thumping his head against the steering wheel. Chloe, always the cautious one, was scrolling through her phone. "There's a meteor shower tonight," she offered. "We could drive out to Miller's Ridge." David, crammed in the back with me, shook his head. He was the thinker, the planner. "Too cloudy. We won't see a thing." "Then what?" Mark demanded, twisting around to face us. his eyes gleaming with that familiar, reckless light. What can we possibly do that isn't this? Sitting here, breathing recycled fast food air? And then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that meant something stupid was about to happen. "I've got it. Let's go to Blackwood." Chloe groaned. "Mark, no. It's creepy there at night." "That's the point," he laughed. "We'll finally put the old ghost story to bed. We'll go down the worm. All of us. At midnight. We'll prove it's just a stupid rusty slide." I should have said no. I felt that little prickle of unease, that quiet voice in my head telling me this was a bad idea. There's just something wrong about a playground at night. It's a place for childhood joy. And seeing it in the dark feels like breaking some kind of unspoken rule. But I was 17, and the fear of being called a chicken was way stronger than the fear of any ghost. And besides, Mark was my best friend. His confidence was contagious. David, surprisingly, was the one who sealed it. "Fine," he sighed, a little smile playing on his lips. "But if a ghost gets me, I'm haunting you for the rest of your life, Mark." "It's a date," Mark grinned, turning the key. The engine coughed to life, and just like that, our fate was set. As we drove toward the park, the streetlights got scarcer. The familiar suburban houses gave way to the dark, tangled woods that bordered the park. A weird sense of finality settled over me. We were laughing and blasting music with the windows down, but underneath it all was this nervous energy. We were treating it like a game, but some small, ancient part of us knew we were trespassing. We were about to knock on a door that was never, ever meant to be opened. And the worst part, it was our idea. We had no one to blame but ourselves. The car's headlights sliced through the heavy darkness as Mark pulled into the gravel lot of Blackwood Park. He killed the engine, and the silence that rushed in was deafening, broken only by crickets and the far-off hum of the highway. The playground equipment, which just looked sad during the day, now looked skeletal and sinister in the moonlight. The swings dangled like gallows, their chains creaking in a breeze we couldn't feel. "Well," Mark said, his voice a little too loud, "here we are, Spook Central." Chloe hugged herself, peering out the window. "I don't like this. It feels like we're being watched." "It's just a park, Chloe," David said, but his voice didn't have its usual confidence. We climbed out of the car and the air felt thick, smelling of damp earth and rotting leaves. It felt like the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. Every rustle in the woods, every snap of a twig under our sneakers, was cranked up to 100. We walked toward the playground, our flashlights cutting wobbly circles in the dark. The worm loomed over us, its faded yellow plastic glowing with a sickly light. The entrance at the top was a perfect circle of pure black, a hole that seemed to suck in our flashlight beams. "All right," Mark declared, rubbing his hands together. "Who's first to ride the ghost tube?" Nobody said a word. The bravado from the car had completely evaporated. Even Mark seemed to hesitate, his grin faltering as he stared up at the slide's opening. "I'll go," he said finally, his cockiness returning. He was putting on a show, for us and maybe for himself. "It's just a slide. Worst that can happen? I get some rust on my jeans." He started up the wooden ladder. Each step groaned, the sound echoing through the dead quiet park. Chloe grabbed my arm. "Leo, I really don't think this is a good idea." "He'll be fine," I whispered back, trying to convince myself more than her. "He'll slide down, laugh at us, and we'll go home." Mark reached the top. He stood there for a second, a silhouette against the cloudy sky. He turned and gave us a big, theatrical bow. "Wish me luck, mortals, I'm going in." He turned back, took a deep breath, and sat down at the edge of the tube. For just a split second, he paused. I saw it, a flicker of real hesitation, and then he was gone, vanishing, into the black mouth with a soft whoosh. We waited, aiming our flashlights at the bottom of the slide. 1 second, 2, 5, 10, nothing. No sound of sliding, no triumphant yell, just the awful silence of the night. "Mark," Chloe called out, her voice trembling. "Are you out? Stop messing around." Only silence answered. "He's just trying to scare us," David said, his voice tight. We swept our flashlights all around the base of the slide. Nothing. "Okay, this isn't funny anymore," I shouted, my heart starting to pound. "Mark, come out." The silence that followed felt heavier, filled with a sickening dread. He went in, but he didn't come out. It was a simple, impossible fact. The slide wasn't that long. It should have taken 3 seconds. We'd been standing here for almost a minute. Panic started its cold crawl up my spine. "Something's wrong," I said. David, ever the pragmatist, shifted into problem-solving mode. "Maybe he's stuck. It's old, maybe a section collapsed inside." "Stuck?" Chloe's voice was high with terror. "We have to get him out." "I'll go," David said, his jaw set. "I'll climb up and look down the tube." "No," Chloe cried, grabbing his arm. "Don't you go in there. What if something happens to you too?" "I'm not going in," David insisted. "I'm just going to look. Someone has to." He was right. As much as every instinct screamed at me to run, he was right. We couldn't just leave Mark. David started up the ladder much more cautiously than Mark had. I watched him climb, my flashlight beam fixed on him. He got to the platform, knelt by the opening, and shined his flashlight into the hole. "See anything?" I yelled up. He didn't answer for a long moment. He just knelt there, peering into the dark. I could see the cone of his flashlight beam just get swallowed up. "David," I called again. Finally he spoke, his voice sounding strange and far away. "I can't see the bottom. The light, it just stops. It's like it's endless." Before I could even process what an endless slide could mean, David did the one thing he promised he wouldn't. He took a breath and slid inside. "David, no." Chloe's scream ripped through the night. This time, we heard something. A long, scraping noise, like fingernails on metal. It went on for way too long, and with it, another sound. A faint, distorted whisper from inside the tube. A horrible, wet sound that wasn't David. Then silence again, thick and suffocating. Chloe was openly sobbing. I stood frozen, my flashlight shaking, pointed at the mouth of the slide. This wasn't happening. It had to be a prank. They were going to jump out any second laughing at us, but they didn't. And then, just as I was about to break, a shape began to emerge from the bottom of the worm. Slowly. It was David. Relief hit me so hard my knees went weak. "David!" I cried, rushing forward. He stumbled out, falling to his hands and knees. He was covered in a thin, grimy film of something dark and slick. "David, are you okay?" Chloe rushed to his side. "Where's Mark? What happened?" He didn't answer. He just knelt there, his head down, breathing in ragged gasps. "David, talk to me," I said, kneeling in front of him. "Where is Mark?" Slowly, he lifted his head, and my blood ran cold. His eyes were wrong. They were his eyes, but they were vacant, empty, like a doll's eyes. There was no recognition, no fear, no him in there. He opened his mouth, But the voice that came out wasn't his. It was a strange, layered whisper, like several voices talking at once. It was the same sound we'd heard from inside the slide, and it said, "He's not here anymore." Chloe shrank back. I just stared, unable to move. The thing wearing David's face slowly got to its feet, its head tilting at an unnatural angle. The layered, whispering voice spoke again, aimed at Chloe. "You shouldn't have kissed Michael behind the bleachers last week, Chloe. You told everyone you couldn't stand him." Chloe's face went white. There was no way David could have known that. She'd never told anyone. Then its empty eyes swiveled to me. The whispering voice felt like it was speaking directly inside my skull. "And you, Leo," it whispered, a twisted smile forming on David's lips. "You still check under your bed every night, afraid of the man with no face from your dream when you were 6. You told your parents it was just a nightmare, but you still see him sometimes, don't you, standing in the corner of your room." Every muscle in my body seized. It was my deepest, most private secret. A childhood terror I had never ever spoken aloud to another living soul. How could it know? How could this thing know that? The horror wasn't about a missing friend anymore. It was about what had come back. This wasn't David. David was gone. Mark was gone. And we were standing in the dark, face to face with something that had stolen our friend and was now wearing his face like a mask, peering out at us with the cold, empty knowledge of our deepest fears. The thing that was David took a jerky step toward us. Its smile widened, stretching David's face into a grotesque parody. The layered whispers kept spilling from his lips, a flood of our secrets. "Chloe, you're afraid you'll never be as smart as your older sister. You read her college textbooks at night just to feel like you measure up." Chloe let out a strangled cry. It wasn't just that it knew, it was the flat, clinical way it said it, like it was reading an ingredients list. It was peeling us back layer by layer and showing us the terrified kids we were hiding underneath. It turned its empty gaze back to me. "And Leo, you're terrified you'll end up just like your father, working a job you hate, living a life of quiet desperation. You look at him sometimes and you see your own future, a ghost in your own house." My breath hitched. Hearing that truth spoken aloud felt like a punch to the gut. This thing didn't need claws or fangs. It had our own minds as weapons. "What are you?" I finally choked out. "What did you do with them?" The thing tilted its head, and I heard a soft, cracking sound from its neck. "What am I?" the layered voices whispered. "I am the silence on the other end of the phone. The reason you lock your doors at night. I am the whisper, and they are with me now. They are part of the story." It took another jerky step, closer to Chloe. "Mark is waiting," it hissed. "He wants you to join him. It's so much easier here. No secrets, no fear, just quiet." It held out David's hand. "Just one slide. That's all it takes." That's when the paralysis broke. Primal survival instinct finally kicked in. This thing wasn't just scaring us, it was trying to take us. The slide wasn't a portal, it was a mouth, and it was still hungry. "Chloe, run!" I screamed, grabbing her arm and pulling her back. For a second she stumbled, her eyes still locked on David's empty face. "But, David," she stammered. "That's not David," I yelled, yanking her with everything I had. "David is gone." The horror of acceptance finally hit her, and we turned and ran. We didn't look back. We just fled, feet pounding on the wood chips, our panicked breaths ripping through the night. Behind us, the whispering voice rose in pitch. twisting into cold, joyless laughter that echoed from dozens of throats at once. "You can't run from what's inside you," it shrieked, the sound chasing us. "I know all your stories." We scrambled into Mark's car, slamming the doors. I fumbled for the keys, my hands shaking so badly it took 3 tries to get them in the ignition. The engine roared to life. I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching on the gravel. As the car spun, the headlights swept across the playground one last time. And I saw it. The thing that was David was standing at the bottom of the ladder to the worm. It wasn't laughing. It was just standing there, perfectly still, watching us go. Its face was a blank mask of chilling emptiness. It didn't need to follow us. It had already planted its poison in our minds. And at the top of the platform, just for a second, I swear I saw 2 tiny points of light, like eyes, glowing from inside the black mouth of the slide, watching, waiting. I slammed my foot on the gas and we tore out of that park. We drove in silence, the only sounds the rush of the wind and Chloe's muffled sobs. The climax wasn't a fight, it was a choice. The choice to abandon our friend and run for our lives. We hadn't won, we had escaped, and we both knew this was far from over. The park might be behind us, but the whispers were inside us now. The drive away from Blackwood Park was a blur. I don't know how long I drove or where I was going. Chloe was curled into a ball in the passenger seat. The silence in the car was thick with terror and grief. We went to the park as 4 friends. 2 of us were coming back, and we were broken. I ended up parked outside Chloe's house. The warm light from her windows felt like it belonged to another world, one we weren't a part of anymore. "What do we do?" Chloe finally whispered. "What do we tell people?" How could we answer that? That our friend was eaten by a slide, and our other friend was now some kind of psychic monster. They'd think we were crazy, lock us up. "I don't know," I said. The words felt useless. Eventually, Chloe's father came out. We cobbled together a pathetic story about getting into a fight with Mark and David, that they'd stormed off into the woods. It was a flimsy lie, and I think he knew it. He could see the pure terror in our eyes. The next day, it all began. Mark's parents called the police. David's were frantic. Chloe and I stuck to our story through questioning. They searched the park and the woods for days, found nothing. No footprints, no scraps of clothing. Mark was just gone. As for David, they found him. 3 days later, sitting on a park bench on the other side of town, catatonic. He didn't respond to his name, didn't recognize his own parents. He was taken to a hospital and then to a long-term psychiatric facility. I went to see him once. Chloe refused to. I had to know. He was in a sterile white room just staring at a wall. He looked like David, but the spark was gone. I talked to him for 20 minutes, my voice echoing in the quiet room, hoping for any flicker of recognition. Nothing, until I got up to leave. As I reached the door, I heard a sound. A whisper, soft, dry, and layered. "The man with no face is behind you, Leo," he whispered to the wall. I ran from that room and never went back. The town moved on. The official story was that Mark ran away, and the trauma caused David to have a psychotic break. It was a neat, tidy explanation that let people sleep at night. But Chloe and I knew the truth. We drifted apart. The shared trauma was a chasm between us. Looking at each other just reminded us of that night. I finished high school and left that town the day I graduated. I never looked back. Years have passed. I have a life now, a job, An apartment in a city so loud, it almost drowns out the silence. Almost, but the fear never really leaves. It's a low hum beneath the surface of everything. I still check under my bed. I still see a faceless shape in the corner of my eye. It knew my fears, and by knowing them, it made them permanent. My mum told me a few years ago that they finally tore down Blackwood Park for a new housing development. They ripped the worm right out of the ground, but it doesn't matter. You can tear down a building, but you can't fill the hole it leaves behind. Places like that are scars on the land. The memory lingers. I don't know what was in that slide. A ghost? Something older? I don't think it has a name. It's an ancient, hungry thing that takes people and turns them into stories. Mark is a local legend now. David is a cautionary tale. And I'm the one who got away. The one who has to tell the story. I know it's watching me, even now. I can feel it. It's waiting. Because it knows my story has to end sometime. And it is very, very patient. The world is full of places like that, isn't it? Places that just feel wrong. Every town has a street, a house, an old park that people whisper about. There are modern folk tales. Sometimes they're just fun, scary stories. But sometimes they're true. I've told you my story. Now I want to hear yours. What are the local legends where you're from, the places you were warned to stay away from? Tell me in the comments. Let's share them. Sometimes bringing things into the light is the only way to take away their power. At the very least, it helps to know you're not the only one who's seen the darkness. And if you want to hear more stories about the things that lurk in the shadows, subscribe and turn on notifications. You never know when a story might just save your life. Stay safe. And for God's sake, stay away from old playgrounds after dark.